Hello, welcome everyone to Redline Global Special. It's all about US and China, Trump and Xi meeting, things happening. But it's not about what they're saying right now. All what they're saying is pretty good. At least that's how it sounds. Tonight we're starting with the story shaping our century. This is China versus the US, a superpower competition that is not just over borders, but over who leads the global economy, technology, and influence. There is trade. Both countries have placed high tariffs on each other's goods to protect local industries. But the real fight is over technology, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, 5G. Whoever leads here controls the future of everything, from medicine to manufacturing to military power. Both nations are investing billions to win the AI race. Look at electric vehicles, for instance. China dominates low-cost production and controls much of the supply chain. The US is responding with subsidies and restrictions to rebuild its own industry. That fight extends to critical minerals, lithium, rare earths, the raw materials behind every modern device. Control these supply chains and you control manufacturing. Lose them and you depend on your rival. There are military tensions too, over South China Sea and Taiwan, that keep security risks very high. At the same time, both sides accuse each other of cyber attacks, spying, and data theft. Globally, China's infrastructure projects are challenging America's economic and political influence in dozens of countries. For now, however, the world is looking at both Trump and Xi with expectations that they will be able to find a workable solution to the situation in the Gulf, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's nuclear program. Can they do it or can they not? That really is the question. To answer this question, I have a wonderful panel here in Islamabad, but before we start here, I have to go to my colleagues in Beirut, where Sahil has his package to run and introduce what he has lined up for us. Over to you, Sahil.
Thank you so much, Talat. That information graphics really helped us understand why this visit is very, very critical. It's, of course, happening while the world is grappling with the ongoing US-Israel crisis. But all eyes are in Beijing because Donald Trump and Xi Jinping coming together visually, diplomatically, geopolitically assume huge significance. This is day 3 of the special simulcast between Sama TV there in Pakistan and South Era Network here in the Middle East. We are providing a global perspective to that wonderful coverage that Sama provides to its viewers. Now, the focus is on China. China did not fire a single shot in the US-Iran war. But when the guns fall silent, it may emerge as the stakeholder that gained the most. From energy reserves to military intelligence to diplomatic influence, Beijing used 8 weeks of the conflict to expand its reach. Now Xi Jinping and Donald Trump meet face to face. What they say to each other and also what they don't could define the next decade. South Era Network, Saad Sohail in Islamabad has more. Take a look.
The leaders of the world's 2 largest economies, Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, are meeting this week. The summit was scheduled months ago, but the events of the last 8 weeks have turned a very routine diplomatic meeting into a very different one. While the US was carrying out a war in the Gulf, China was not just sitting on the sidelines, it was stress testing a new era of Chinese influence. When strikes hit Iran on the 28th of February, the world's most vital artery shut down, the Strait of Hormuz. Nearly half of China's oil moves through it. The International Energy Agency's head called it the biggest security energy challenge in history. Anticipating instability, China had already surged oil imports by 16%, building reserves of 1.2 billion barrels. When the strait closed, China had reserves to buy political time. Iranian oil kept moving through back channels, rerouted through Malaysia and Iraq. When Washington sanctioned a Chinese refinery for processing that oil, Beijing did something it had never done before. It formally ordered its companies to ignore those sanctions, calling them a violation of international law. China has also been settling oil payments in yuan rather than dollars. The dollar still dominates, but that shift has been quietly growing. On the other side, what was happening militarily was just as significant. China didn't fire a single shot, but its military analysts were watching carefully. Iran, using basic drones and low-cost missiles, kept the world's most powerful navy largely outside the Persian Gulf for weeks. China studied how a smaller power used geography and cheap weapons to impose enormous costs on a superpower. The US accused China of being more involved than it let on, sanctioning 3 Chinese firms for allegedly providing Iran with targeted satellite intelligence, a claim China flatly denies. With American carriers redeployed to the Gulf, US military activity in the South China Sea plummeted by 30%. That stretch of water where both powers have been locked in a long-running competition for influence. 1 week into the war, China announced a record-breaking defense budget of $277 billion. Then there is diplomacy. China condemned the strikes, also helped Iran bring back to the table in April, also hosted Iran's foreign minister in Beijing just a few days ago. Something big is also shifting in the Gulf. Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar all absorbed Iranian strikes during this war, finding a security model built around American protection tested like never before. Gulf capitals are now quietly diversifying whom they rely on. Washington needed Beijing to pressurize Tehran into reopening the strait. Tehran needed Beijing's backing to sit with Washington. The Gulf countries, on the other hand, are quietly shopping for alternatives. When Xi Jinping and Donald Trump sit in that meeting on the 14th of May, trade and tariffs won't be the only thing they'd be talking about. They'd be sitting at a time when the balance of power in the world has fundamentally shifted.
Now, the digital audience of South Era Network, especially the Gen Z, keep talking about how everything is so toxic and loyalty has gone for a toss. And clearly in international relations, we are seeing a similar pattern. Talat, back to you. You were telling me the other day that you hold a degree in international relations. So viewers of South Era Network, I'll urge them to listen to this debate very, very carefully as Talat now discusses the significance of Donald Trump's visit to Beijing with his panel of guests. Over to you, Talat.
Thank you very much, Sahil. A great report. Let me start with cheers. In Beijing, Trump is raising a glass to Xi and Xi is raising a glass to Trump. It sounds really great, but is it that great? I have panelists who are lined up, people with great insights, and they will be able to answer some of these questions. Zoon Ahmed Khan, research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Thank you very much for being with us. We have Raj Baker, Executive Director, Stratfor, Center for Global Applied Geopolitics. Thank you very much, Raj, for being with us. And Energy, political commentator and host of CGT and radio. Let me start with you, Anna, if I could ask you this. When they raise the glass to each other, it sounds so great, great pictures, but is everything really worth raising a glass to? Is everything okay, kosher? Are they not competitors? Are they not fighting? Is the world not, really a bad place as far as consumers are concerned? How does this picture of, cheering correspond to ground reality in the world today? Go ahead.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I think for this question, from the Chinese perspective, what we are seeing is both sides are trying to define a new framework for China-U.S. relations. Because during the meeting, President Xi Jinping put forward a vision of what is called constructive strategic stability, a way of managing competition and preventing conflict through more structured and predictable engagement. I think the idea resets on 4 pillars. One is making cooperation the mainstay and keeping competition within clear and manageable boundaries, and also properly handling differences. And also the last one is building a more stable and predictable relationship over the medium to long term. And finally, I think a longer term mindset is being said. This is not just about the immediate summit cycle, but about shaping a framework that can guide the relationship for years ahead. So I think overall, is less about resolving all differences in one meeting, but more about trying to stabilize how those differences are managed going forward. But from what I've seen in social media reactions and also our own straight interviews in China, there is also a more steady and confident tone emerging in China. We spoke to people on the street, and the general attitude was cautiously positive. There is a growing awareness of how power works in global politics, whether it's issues like U.S. illegal seize of Venezuela president, or strike on Iran, or pressure on countries like Cuba. And many people here have a clearer understanding of the structural nature of U.S. power.
These are the fruits of the new world digital order, where people have access to information, they can make up their own mind. But great perspective. And let me go to Raj on this. Raj, this sounds like a bilateral equation that is recalibrating itself, and it sounds very positive. But we have seen historically, when the movers and shakers of the world order get on with each other and get along well with each other, the world actually breathes easy. Here's a strange situation. Trump and Xi seem to be getting along fine with each other. The world is not. So what is happening here?
So I think that we're seeing very publicly what appears to be very friendly relationship between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. But that doesn't mean that the relationship between the United States and China is nearly as calm or as stable. In the United States, remember that Congress wields a lot of power. Congress very much has a maybe not anti-China tone, but certainly a tone that perceives China as the primary competitor to the United States economically, politically, militarily. The U.S. Defense Department sees China as the #1 threat and the #1 competitor. And quite frankly, China sees the United States as the biggest challenger to constraining China's own expansion of economic ties of its own national security sphere. And Xi Jinping made that very clear in his several comments regarding Taiwan.
Zoon, let me bring you in on this point. What is the one matrix that the world should use to see whether bilateral ties between Beijing and Washington cascade into some sort of a relief for the world? Right now, trade is halted, energy prices are shooting up, consumers are suffering, Strait of Hormuz is blocked, nuclear issues are out there, thumbing their nose at those who thought they had been resolved. What is that one thing that should come out of this meeting that should tell the world that things are going to improve?
Thank you so much, Talat, for having me. I think I deeply resonate with both the speakers, with Anna from the perspective that in Beijing, in China in general, I think there was a clear understanding that this meeting is not going to lead to some tectonic shift in the basic dynamic of both the countries. It is very clear, like Roger mentioned, the way China perceives the U.S. and the way the U.S. perceives China. And there are deep-seated reasons for that perception. And I will quote, what President Xi said in his meeting, that what we need to focus on as the two biggest economies, and of course, by any standard, as the most important bilateral relation. How do we work together? How do we cooperate together in a way that benefits us, our people, and the people of the world? So what really needs to be done, and I think Beijing's expectation and the people here, the expectation is quite realistic. What they're looking for is more functionality. This is a relationship where basic, there need to be guardrails set. There needs to be an understanding about how trade and investment can work out. We also know that this is 9 years after the last American president landed in Beijing, and that too was Trump. And even though that meeting went very positively, right afterwards is when Trump started his tariff war. And I'll also mention here that on Chinese social media, there is a special term used for Trump, which translates to nation builder. And what they really mean is that Trump's tariffs and this trade war, all of that sort of also galvanized that resolve within the Chinese policies and society that they really need to be increasingly self-reliant. So what we are looking at is a China whose economy has doubled. It is now 70% of the US economy, and a China that is more confident and one that is asking less of the US but wants a more functional, a more predictable relationship, a relationship where they're able to have conversations about things that matter to both of them. So if I had to use, one word, I think everyone's expectations need to be realistic enough to recognize that nothing tectonic is to be expected, but it is important for both these countries, for both heads of states, to have dialogue, to be set up different mechanisms to be able to discuss issues that affect both of them. And right now, we also know that for Trump, he took this big business delegation, top 50 business leaders in the world, and he also mentioned that in his bilateral with Xi Jinping, right? And he basically what he wants is also to showcase America as an attractive investment destination. It wants China to buy more agriculture, more aircrafts, etc., to name a few. That helps Trump in the upcoming. So Trump needs more wins from this meeting than I think China does.
Okay, a quick round again. Anna, let me come to you with a very open and straight and basic question. Will Strait of Hormuz reopen as a result of the talks between Xi and Trump? That's one matrix that the world is using as to who is running the world and how effective their bilateral ties are. What is your take? What can happen in the Strait of Hormuz?
I think China's position on Iran is very clear. It called for de-escalation as quickly as possible and an end to the fighting. And I think President Xi has also already put a 4-point proposal for maintaining peace and stability in the Middle East, upholding the principles of peaceful coexistence and respecting national sovereignty and adhering to the international law and ensuring coordinated development and nuclear safety. And China is expected to reiterate this position to the United States, urging Washington to better recognize this situation along with global.
Let me take the same question to Raj.
And take concrete.
Let me take the same question to Raj.
Just let me
go ahead.
add one point is that China is not involved in this crisis, and I think the United States is the main factor that decided whether Hormuz could open or not.
Yeah, Raj, but the issue is that if you're a global power, then you have global responsibilities. Will Strait of Hormuz open as a result of this summit or not?
So I don't think the strait pattern changes at all. What we've seen is that, China certainly has international economic interests and a growing ability to strengthen its own political interests abroad. It's yet to really be able to shape resolutions in areas because the Chinese continue to maybe for good or bad, refuse to use their military as a major tool abroad. And this is a military crisis. The United States brings all tools of power to the table, and the Chinese have constrained themselves to political and economic. And, we just had the Iranians visiting China. That did not change the dynamic. We've just had announced that the Russians are going to visit China after this meeting. China is certainly using this to position themselves as the international mediator, but so far we haven't seen much progress out of that attempted mediation.
Zoon, your 30 seconds take on this. Go ahead.
30 seconds? I'll take exactly 30 seconds. You said, a great power should also, should have taken some responsibilities. I think when it comes to global development, upholding the international order, China is the one country single-handedly picking up more than its weight. When it comes to the Strait, I do agree with Anna. It's hard to, no, I don't think this meeting will result in suddenly opening the Strait, but China is a country that believes in upholding international law. And I do believe that this meeting and the consensus they reach can nudge us in the right direction towards a resolution. And I think Pakistan as a mediator will continue to play a constructive role to that end. So let's hope it's sooner because of this meeting than later.
Sooner rather than later. It should have happened yesterday. All three of you, thank you so very much for joining us.
It should have happened continues. A month ago.
Should have happened a month ago. Thank you very much for watching this. Our transmission continues. Welcome back to Redline Global. We are looking at the possibilities of peace and immediate solutions to some of the pressing problems that the world is faced with. High energy prices, trade coming to a grinding halt, Strait of Hormuz being choked, nuclear fears hanging thick in the air. Can Xi and Trump do it? So far, frankly, there is a lot of bonhomie and there is friendly gestures and a lot of big talk, but we don't seem to be making a headway as far as the immediate issues are concerned. I'm going to now take you to Beirut, where my colleague Sahil is going to be talking about something that has crept into the discourse about warfare. It is not just about the rare earth materials, it is about small drones and AI-driven technology. Big guns matter, but low-end, high-tech instruments of war also matter, including propaganda. So over to you, Sahil. Tell us what you have.
Thank you so much, Talat. You're right. Propaganda, information warfare. The other day we were discussing what it means to have information warfare in the midst of a conflict. And Talat, while you took that short break, I was looking at my Instagram and looking at some of these videos for the ongoing conflict, and I didn't know whether they are real or fake. That's where we are here in 2026. And why just me? If you were watching the US-Iran war unfold on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, you were not just watching the conflict. You were watching a parallel war being fought for your perception of it. AI-gen videos flooded social media within hours of every strike. Some were indistinguishable from real footage. Explosions that never happened, casualties that never existed, victories claimed by both sides simultaneously. For the first time in a major conflict, the line between what happened and what was made to look like it happened virtually disappeared. Take a look at this presentation by my colleague, Muna Khan.
As missiles flew over the Middle East, something else was spreading just as fast. Fake videos, fake satellite images, and a very real profit motive behind them. This video shows missiles striking Tel Aviv and was shared hundreds of thousands of times on social media. It was entirely AI-generated, and the people posting it weren't state actors or propagandists, they were content creators chasing a payout. Platforms like X pay eligible users based on views and engagement. Post a video that goes viral and earn money. It's that simple. And AI has made going viral with conflict footage almost effortless. What used to take a production team now takes minutes on a laptop. A fake video of Dubai's Burj Khalifa in flames racked up tens of millions of views. Another fabricated satellite image of damage to a U.S. naval base was shared by a state-linked Iranian newspaper. The line between opportunism and information warfare is getting very thin. What makes this even harder to untangle is that people are turning to AI to fact-check AI. When viewers used X's own chatbot, Grok, to verify some of these videos, it told them the footage was real. The very technology people trust to cut through the noise is amplifying it. X has now said it will suspend creators who post unlabeled AI conflict footage. But critics say that misses the point entirely. The problem isn't the label, it's the incentive. Engagement and accuracy, as one researcher put it, are fundamentally at odds. And right now, in this war, engagement is winning.
Missiles and drones we have long understood, but what that report from South Era Networks, Muna Khan, makes clear is that the most destabilizing weapon of this war may have been a laptop or this mobile phone or this iPad right here. Joining me now is Lija Zhang, columnist and political activist. She joins us from London. Also with us is Eldar Mamidov, foreign policy analyst. He joins us from Latvia. Lija, let's start talking about, a short while back, I was reading the transcript you sent to me of an article you're working on titled, How Trump Changed the Way China Sees America and Itself. I think that applies to each and every country, even across South Asia. In fact, I often say that just like BC and AD, when our future generations would read our part of the history, they'll always see it as BTD and ATD, before Donald Trump and after Donald Trump. Would it be correct to say that for decades, many Chinese viewed America with a mixture of admiration and awe, but that psychological gap has narrowed dramatically?
Absolutely. I know China has been fascinated with America and its president, and particularly Trump. And when Trump first came to power back in 2017, people felt relieved. And in fact, some people liked it because compared to Hillary Clinton, Trump, he didn't care about human rights. He doesn't care about human rights. like Hillary Clinton, and he's supposedly good business. So people really liked it. But this amusement and some fascination have turned sour after Trump launched the trade war with China. So most Chinese people feel that China had gained upper hand. So this image in China, for many decades, China viewed America with envy and admiration. But that image has been shattered by Trump, because of his, I should tell you that many people in China call Trump, he got a Chinese name, Chuan Jianguo. Chuan is Trump's translation roughly in Chinese. Jianguo is a hugely popular Chinese name, meaning building China. So Trump is called Trump, the nation builder. So people are laughing, saying that Trump is making China even greater.
Eldar, to you now. You have been a former diplomat. And as a former diplomat, from the area which has long been exposed to Russian information operations, have you seen psychological warfare evolve from traditional propaganda into today's battlefield of memes, trolling, networks, viral videos, and algorithm-driven narratives?
Yeah, and that's a problem that is clearly expanded throughout the European Union. We see attempts to, interfere in elections to the benefit of certain candidates that are perceived to be more friendly to Russia. But I think this trend has also engendered a countervailing movement that also has to concern those who really value free speech and other liberal values. Concretely, I mean that some of the narratives that don't fit in the political preferences of the ruling elites in most EU countries, which are, let's say, broadly on the liberal, centrist liberal spectrum, they are immediately labeled as Russian operation, propaganda influence operation. And there's even a new term that has been circulating lately, cognitive warfare, which is conveniently vague and unfalsifiable and could mean everything and nothing at the same time. So I think there's a very fine line to be respected between the absolutely legitimate and necessary urge to fight disinformation, fake news, and all sorts of illegitimate interference. But there must be a wall separating this urge and these priorities from protections of the free speech, which could express itself in opinions and positions that are counter to those defended by the governments in place in Europe today.
And it's interesting that you spoke about cognitive warfare, because that's really about how to manipulate the decision-making of policymakers, of governments, and also when it comes to manipulating the common men and women. And I have been doing fact-checking since 2016. It used to be so easy, say in 2020, to distinguish between what was fake and real. We had physical cues. We used to observe how one would blink or how hands would flow from one place to another. But now it's so difficult. Lija, to you now, you often describe yourself as a bridge between China and the world. Viewers of South Era Network remember you appearing on the show and talking about it. Now, in today's conflicts, where narratives spread through memes, hashtags, viral videos, online trolling campaigns, how do you see technology changing the way states shape public opinion, both domestically and internationally, given especially how China has its own vibrant, intrinsic, indigenous social media?
Indeed, China has its own specific situation. So the flow of information is very much controlled. So the government tolerates some, less, they also manipulate people. I mentioned that Trump has made Chinese people more confident. He fueled nationalism, made China more confident. That confidence also partly thanks to the propaganda. For example, in the social media, there's a hot term called kill line, 斩杀线. It's kind of basically a fatal threshold. The government frequently feeds people information and image, talking about how so many ordinary American people are struggling and, people suffering from extreme poverty, violence, and also, terrible drug abuse. Often see image of people, people lying dead or half dead in the street. So the government Chinese government is very, very good in using propaganda, manipulate people's impression.
Interesting. We have exactly about 4 minutes left for this discussion, so I'll ask a question to you, Elda, and then possibly try to get some final comments from you, Lija. Elda, I really want to address this misconception that new technology in modern conflict is all about songs, messages, memes, trolling, hashtags, and viral content. Sure, they are part tools of psychological warfare, but technology also means drones, swarm attacks, cyber operations, speedboats, low-cost weapons compared to traditional nuclear and high-end military systems. Has this changed the rules altogether? Because earlier countries used to negotiate and then they used to fail and then used to fight. But now they first attack, then comes a counter-attack very quickly, like we have seen in the ongoing conflict, and then the parties come to the table for talks.
Well, I think what we are seeing, I think you mean the war in Iran. What we're seeing is that both sides are trying to establish their leverage. What we're seeing is bargaining for leverage. And obviously, the United States is a superpower. It has overwhelming air superiority and generally uncontested military superiority over Iran. But at the same time, Iran has a formidable arsenal of drones, of missiles, of speedboats, and it is deploying it effectively because Iranians have been preparing for this moment for decades. And clearly, now that they perceive that the war is existential for them, they are just using all the tools, the asymmetric tools that they have at their disposals. And it's not just drones and missiles and speedboats, it's also, let's not forget, their allies and proxies in the region. So, yes, and I think that what really is decisive here is the asymmetry of stakes. Frankly, for the United States, the war in Iran, like any war in the Middle East, has no existential stakes. For Iran, there are existential stakes. The regime, the government feels that they have nothing to lose. So therefore, they're using all the means at their disposal. They have shown over the years, over the decades, that they're very resourceful. They are acutely aware of their conventional inferiority, but they are very resourceful in terms of leveling the field by developing those asymmetric means. And it could be said that so far they have been reasonably successful. The regime is still there. The United States and Israel have not achieved any of their stated goals. And that also explains why Iran's position at the negotiation table is so self-confident. They're not going to make concessions on their red lines unless they receive reciprocal concessions from the United States, such as guarantees that no war is coming again and sanctions relief, basically.
Thank you so much, Elda, and also Lija, for helping us make better sense of this story. We'll leave it there for now. Talat, it seems from this panel discussion, it's clear that the psychological warfare and rules of the war have changed. Last year, I was working for the University of Missouri. We were trying to build an AI tool that distinguishes between deep fakes and the real ones. And it becomes so difficult because the data available just doesn't take into account our skin colors or the skin colors of those who skin color of those who are in Pakistan or in South Asia, or our accent. They just take into account US accented or UK accented English. And that's why I think networks like South Era Network, which focuses on the global South, and Sama TV, which focuses on Pakistan and the region, are so important to verify facts and inform our viewers in a very, very diligent manner. With this simulcast, we are trying to merge that synergy and move towards that common goal. Back to you, Talat.
Thank you so very much. I couldn't agree more with you. I think the game is old. The tools have changed. It's Goebbelian to begin with, but at a much larger scale. And you talked about technology being used by snipers, as I call them, who sit at a distant, unknown, and hit you with fake news. But we also have to spare a thought for propaganda that seeps into the mainstream. I was looking at the CBS news regarding some Iranian planes that have been sitting in Pakistan away from American gaze. And the story actually made it to a congressional committee hearing, and Pete Hegseth was asked questions regarding that. And then you more recently have the news that came out of Israel about Netanyahu's secret visit to UAE, which UAE denies. And then there was another news about Saudi Arabia secretly attacking Iran, meant to essentially create further dissensions within the Muslim world. So, there are these mainstreams of propaganda as well, but you're right. We have the tools available, and we have the determination to, sift fact from fiction, and it's very important to have debates like these. Thank you very much. This was really insightful. We now take a short break, and then we come back with an even more exciting and frightening side of the debate, which is, are we going nuclear? Is the world sitting at the cusp of another nuclear age? Stay tuned for that.